Welcome everyone for this new podcast of Pipeline Builders that we do at Tamtam. I'm Edouard, I'm the CEO of Tamtam. Tamtam is essentially a pipeline generation tool leveraging AI agents. And today we welcome Paolo. Thanks for joining, Paolo. And I'll leave the mic to you, and it would be great to get some intro on your end.
Thank you, Edward. Hi, everyone. I'm Paolo. I'm the CEO and founder of OutboundHub. We are an agency specializing in helping software clients build predictable pipeline with the cold calling, right?
All
So
right.
thanks for having me, Edward.
Thanks for your intro, Paolo. So you mentioned doing outbound and especially cold calling. What's your methodology and what type of clients are you working with today?
Yeah, exactly. So let's start first with the type of clients, right? So I decided specifically working with European clients, specifically Italian clients, because I see that there is a big, massive gap in outbound. So things are slowly changing, especially post-pandemic, but we look at continental Europe in a different way than, for example, the US and the UK in terms of outbound, because we see that those markets are still behind in terms of commercial development. The UK is much closer to the US model, but the rest of Europe is different. For example, we decided to work specifically with software clients in Italy, as Italy, it's still a very traditional market, very traditional mindset. Imagine, the classic field sales rep visiting the clients, building relationships over long lunches and dinners. So that's where we specifically work in order to improve and digitalize the way of doing sales, right? Tech is changing. We decided to work with tech because it's a ever growing market, and it's particularly changing, especially after the pandemic, especially with the arrival of remote sales. So that's what we currently do for our clients. Regarding the methodology, the easiest way to visualize this is as a funnel. What we typically see in the funnel of our clients is either it's full of holes or there's not enough water going in the funnel. So before launching anything outbound related, what we first do, Edward, is we analyze the funnel, right? We define the ICP very clearly. We understand the industry, size, the maturity, the buying triggers. Then we evaluate the product in context because we work with very technical companies doing very technical, making very technical products for very complex industries. For example, the mechanical engineering, ERP, very complex AI products, right? So what we first do is we understand what they're selling. We then move into the messaging. And here is, Edward, where the founders, what we often see, oversimplify things. We don't create one message because imagine that these companies work for very large enterprises, and large enterprises think differently. They have separated silos or departments with each a specific pain point. So we create one message that just doesn't fit only the vertical, let's say the industry, right? Like, for example, big manufacturing companies, but we also tailor the message based on the persona because an HR, for example, has very different pain points than, for example, sales or the production manager, right? So that's actually something that we really work on together, the client, to tailor the message to make sure that the conversion rates are as high as possible in, of course, in outbound channel.
How long is that process at the beginning around the ICP, around the persona?
It really depends a little bit on also on the client's responsiveness. I would say between one and 2 weeks, usually. We have a lot of data. We've been doing this for the past 2.5 years, and I come from 7.5 years of experience working in complex software sales. So I kind of, more or less roughly know what are usually the pain points. So there is no need for massive market research. And usually these type of clients that we work with are kind of mature in their journey. They do between 5 and 20 mil a year. So they're not really like startups, right? They usually already have some pitch decks, some sales material, some case studies that we kind of can get info from. So
You,
to give you an answer, between 1 and 2 weeks maximum.
All right. And it's great that you mentioned ICP, so ideal customer profiles. Do you have a concrete example on what was the ICP before you and maybe something that is too broad as an ICP, and maybe a type of ICP that you like for your clients?
For sure. And let's pick an example of a company doing ticketing system for the aerospace manufacturers, right? They're very specific, but they were targeting any type of manufacturing because they didn't really understand who was the best client for them. We did a workshop together, we understood that specifically their ticketing system made sense, especially the price made sense for very high spending ticket clients. We understood like what they were currently doing, and they were, as I said, where they were just going too broad with too many, manufacturers, and this would dilute the message too much. Because when they were trying to, let's say, send an email or, I don't know, approach them by trying to do some cold calls internally, what would happen is these companies that they were targeting, they didn't really feel the urgency to buy because they weren't, how can I say, they didn't feel like the salespeople really understood and made an effort to understand their context. So that's the first thing that we did. After working with us, they understood that they're super incredibly good. Their offer is crazy good for specifically that target audience. And then we just build a targeted lead list based on those criteria. As I said, the industry, the size, the maturity, because not all the companies are ready to buy. We try to pick the low hanging fruits to make sure that the customer gets as early as possible a return on investment in terms of also like payback time. And then we expanded the list on more, on more.
Um, all right. So it's incredible that in a sense less is more. So less companies
Yeah,
targeted, but better results. Would you say
absolutely.
that you divided by 5, 10, 20 the number of companies they were looking after, and how big was the TAM that you defined? So the total addressable market that you worked on for this client.
Yeah. This customer, just to make sure that it's clear, else very complex software that takes around 4 to 5 months to deploy, and it costs between 100 and 350,000 euros, right? So it's very, very, very strategic. It's a strategic asset that companies change once in 10 years, basically. So before working with us, they identified more than 3,000 potential companies, but we later scaled it to 300. So a tenth,
Okay.
right? A tenth of the market is ready to buy, like exactly in fit for their specific use case. And then we decided to target those and do an outreach campaign on those accounts.
All right. And out of those 300, I don't know if that's in 6 months or 1 year, and how many could you book?
Usually we were doing around 10 demos a month, more or
Okay.
less. We worked for 6 months with this company.
So 60.
So we booked 60 demos out of the 300.
Whoa.
With 80% of conversion rate from like discovery, so the first meeting, the introduction meeting, to the proposal. So it's crazy. So almost all
Whoa.
the opportunities that we provided them were highly in fit. And the customer, because I think that people asking probably in the comments, how is it possible the time is so small? It is possible because we usually use an ABM tactic that goes very deep in the account, and then we broaden it up, we expand it into the account, right?
Hmm.
Targeting multiple people from multiple departments. So we were able to connect the dots, build multiple champions, and create a business case that the customer could easily sell onto the C-suite, basically, the leadership.
So you mentioned the new conversion rate. What was the conversion rate before you had that approach? What's the uplift?
Maybe 12%, 15%. They were imagine, Edward, that it's a very traditional industry. The company, my client, they are doing around 10 mil a year, but they are very traditional salespeople going to, for example, like expos, events, and also, like as I said, doing lunches and dinners, going around the car, basically. So it's a very old type of image of the salesperson, which kind of makes sense, but not in the early stages of the funnel. It makes sense to build a relationship, when after the demo, you're discussing the proposal. It makes sense to see the customer face to face, but not in the initial stages. So thanks to like having a better targeting, a better approach, a more targeted and messaging, right? Specific per industry and per buyer, we were able to increase almost 4x the conversion rate.
Yeah, so
Because these
from
people
15 to
are,
60%, you
it's
said.
crazy because you have to understand these companies are extremely talented in making the final sales, right? They know how the product is outstanding in terms of quality, but what they lacked in was how to grab attention in an overly saturated market. How do you grab attention from companies that don't want to get pitched? How do you grab attention from companies that, yeah, like it's hard to kind of scale because there are not that many and they're difficult to kind of intercept? That's the question that I actually answer with my company.
That's great. So moving from 15% to 60% conversion. So definitely a less is more approach on that very sharp list of 300 companies and that ABM approach. Those 300 companies, were they all in Italy in that case?
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of the specifically in the northern part of Italy, where the industries are, the manufacturing plants are, like in around like Turin, in Lombardy, and a region called Emilia Romagna in the like northeast, close to Venice. There are a lot of plants there. Usually, it's where we targeted. As the south, it's not really, how can I say, a very nice place to start the campaign, as most industries are in the central north, especially.
So I'm not surprised based on the ACV and typically the fact that they are all in Italy. It's typically 200, 500,000 maybe max for this type of ACV. The maximum number of companies you can go after. There are not unlimited companies in a country like Italy that you can go after to pay this amount of money. I was super curious about your background. Maybe taking a step backwards from your
Absolutely.
former experiences. I know you were an SDR yourself. I know you had a first venture as well before. So it would be great to hear around what pains when it comes to building pipeline you experience in those companies and maybe how it inspired your new agency.
Yeah, so I would say let's get started 10 years ago. 10 years ago, first of all, I come from Italy, from Milan. I lived there for 13 years of my life. And I moved for personal reasons. We moved to the Netherlands. And that's where the pivot point was. That's exactly where everything happened, right? I was 14. I did high school there. I went to university in a different language as I was forced to learn Dutch, right? Dutch and English. And then, funny, but all my life I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. I didn't want to be like an astronaut or a football player. I wanted to build the rockets that would bring us to Mars. I know it's like a silly dream, right? But I actually ended up entering and being accepted in the one of the most prestigious university in the Netherlands for aerospace engineering in Delft. But then I would say after 4.5 months, I just quit out of the nowhere. I quit because I said I don't want to like get stuck in a cubicle for all my life for maybe 4,000 euros gross a month, and I understood that my skills were not like logical with maths and like physics and writing CAD or something like that, but more communication, talking to people, understanding what's going on, and persuade them into buying. That's something that I actually learned by accident. I remember that I was kind of in a very dark moment or something, and then I got a lead that they were hiring for an Italian SDR, but I didn't know what that was. So, like telemarketer back then, it was called in 2019 for a software company selling into e-commerce. So that's the first time I actually approached the cold calling. And for me was at first brutal. Imagine I was doing like 350 calls a day and I was just hearing like no, 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 no constantly. So that was definitely like a very big punch into my ego. And that was like the first time I actually understood how hard it is to make money in real life, right? Skip a lot of years. I moved, up the ladder. I went to other software companies, did also the full cycle. And then in 2022, I actually ended up being hired at Google as an account strategist for the ads department in Spain. But then I also understood after 6 months, or to be honest, I'm just a number. Every day was the same. Even if you were like a top performer, as I was, realistically, you couldn't really move up the ladder. You didn't have any real tangible impact. And I decided just to quit. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna start my own agency. In 2023, I moved to Peru because I saw a gap between the South American and the US market. I saw that a lot of companies in the US were hiring SDRs, but hiring in the United States is very expensive. We're talking about at least 100K salary between base and or the fees and bonus and taxes and whatever. And I wanted to fill the gap by providing skilled, talented Latin American talent to software clients in the US. Spoiler, it failed miserably. Why?
Yeah.
Like a lot. I almost like lost 40,000 euros because I didn't have any ops. I didn't know how to deliver. I didn't know how to hire the right people. I didn't have any processes or systems in place. So I just like lost a lot of money in useless things. For example, the branding, the logo, the marketing, all the cool, automation stuff. I just burned through the cash and then I had to declare bankruptcy. So that was quite fun. Then later that year, I didn't have enough of failing miserably. So I went to Australia to open a SaaS with a friend of mine. Basically, just to put it in a very short visualization concept, it was just like a chatbot for psychologists to automate the boring stuff, the admin. But later, it was like early 20, no, I would say mid 2023, ChatGPT just started, right? It wasn't like you could vibe code your way into making SaaS. Before you had to use like TensorFlow and Python and so on, right? So it was very challenging, technically speaking. We gained the first traction, but then again, we failed because the CTO, to be honest, didn't have the right knowledge in house, and we didn't have the money, the funding to properly build the tech stack around the software. So to be honest, I had to move back to Barcelona, work as an SDR for a big corporation. There, to be honest, I again felt the pressure of making something of my own as I got laid off, even though I was one of the top performer for the Benelux market. I will never forget it. If you ask me one moment that you will never forget is this, when I got a letter one day, actually an email from my manager saying, Paolo, pack your things, you're out. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like one of the best top performer. What am I doing wrong? Yeah, I spoke to the VP of sales. You're too ambitious for this role, Paolo.
Whoa.
I'm like, okay, all right, thanks. I mean, if doing my job is bad, wow, maybe I should have done less, right? And that's how OutboundHub, my current company, has started in mid 2024. Started with nothing. I had to move out of my apartment because I just didn't have the money to rent in Barcelona. I had to move at my grandma's place in the Canary Islands, and then it's history. I started from nothing with no money from I don't know, investors or friends or nothing. And now we're doing 1.2 mil a year, and we are a team of 14 people.
For how many clients?
27 current clients
Oh, that's
with
great.
1 year contract.
Amazing.
Very
And
complex.
and all those experiences, when it comes to business development, and you were an SDR, what did you learn from them? And what do you apply now to everything you do for your clients?
The resilience. An SDR gets told no like 100 times a day. I think the SDR is the perfect role for almost anything, like in the white collar type of work, as it teaches you, it forces you to understand and to learn how to get resilient, how to never give up, how to always chase for the yes, even though you have to go through 1,000. Sales is a fundamental skills, even for engineers that have an incredible product and like they want to build the next Facebook, it doesn't matter unless you know how to sell. You can have the best product ever made, but if no one understands the value, because you can persuade them, you can understand their pain point, their challenges, and then convert them into conversion, right? Into a sale, it doesn't matter. So that's what I understood from being an SDR is to never give up. Keep on calling until somebody will say yes. And if something is not good, is because either I didn't do enough activity or because my messaging is wrong or I'm targeting the wrong people that don't have the problems that I try to solve.
All right.
This skill is fundamental for any businessman
Yeah, and I can imagine
in
your
space.
clients, they come from, and that's why it's great to have you on this podcast. They come from very different markets, backgrounds, offerings, and then the same workflows work the same. Like you mentioned before, ICP, positioning, messaging, maybe coming and adding from an operational standpoint. So you mentioned cold calling, maybe some emails, LinkedIn, multi-channel sequences. Like, how do you organize the outreach system for your clients? And what's for you the best way to organize an outreach system?
Yeah. So the first step is it depends on your RCP and your product. There's no way around it. So there is no universal answer to this question. If you're selling something, let's say very niche, as the example that I just brought up a moment ago, like aerospace or highly specialized software with a small TAM, ABM is almost mandatory, right? Because you cannot afford to burn through your account. Let's say that in though your TAM is large, your contract value is low. Let's say you're selling a small SaaS, like a small AI SaaS, for example, that's cost under $100 a month. Then email can work really well because you need scale, massive scale, and you can also afford to lose through some accounts as the lost contract value is not tremendous, right? And you need a lot of like manpower, a lot of skill to make it have sense. Because you cannot have somebody in house like doing cold calls that like costs you 4,000 euros a month or 3,000 euros fixed a month, and he sells like 100 euros licenses. It doesn't make sense. Where we see the strongest results in cold calling specifically is a rare combination between having a large market, or at least like not super, super, super small, a specific product, and a high contract value. That's where cold calling usually gives the best results, as it also tends to be the quickest way to build pipeline, right? Inbound is powerful, but you have to understand it takes between 6 and 12 months to see some results.
Okay.
And it takes a lot of effort. You have to understand how to build a proper inbound funnel from the ground up. And most founders don't know how to do that. You need somebody with a lot of marketing knowledge to understand how to build a profitable personal brand, how to like build, sequences that make sense for your unique audience and try to gain the attraction and convert down the funnel. It's not easy. The last but not least is the social selling, which is a fancy name for working with LinkedIn. It can work. It's not very scalable due to the platform limitations. And just yesterday, we noticed that the famous platform HeyReach for the automation just got banned. So it kind of lets you understand the world we're living in, where a lot of companies try to automate the hell out of the campaigns, but now even more strict restrictions are coming in. So we are going into like a place where there's a lot of automations, a lot of noise in the market. But the way to make it successful is, as I said before, less is more. The more manual, the better it is. Even though it's not scalable, even though maybe it's not super efficient, it usually tends to give the high return on investments down the line, right? So of course, like Edward, if you have unlimited budget, if you have a lot of money, a lot of investment, of course, build a mix over time. So in a structured way, not all at once, because then the message gets diluted. You don't have enough data, enough time to understand what markets work and what doesn't. So usually I would say it depends on your recipe. Start with one channel and understand exactly where your customers are at. Where can you find them? Maybe in some expos, maybe on the phone because they are very receptive, maybe on LinkedIn because they're super active, maybe I don't know, on blogs, maybe on Reddit. It depends on your audience.
Do you warm up your calls before calling the guys? Do you send emails to warm them up? Say, hey, I reached out via email and so on. Do you have a
Do you
specific?
mean for our clients?
Okay,
Do you mean like for our clients or
yeah,
for
for your
ourselves?
clients, yeah.
Um,
Or is it like
no.
call day one and that works essentially?
Yeah, to be honest, we send like cold emails only after we have had like at least a conversation with somebody in the
Okay,
in the in the company. It's a very manual like cold email. Usually we use the data or something like the information that we got from the conversation as hook to have very high response rate. So usually, to be honest, we actually, I would say we book like maybe 10% of the meetings with cold emails, but they are always after the cold call, never
okay.
before. And usually our clients have some type of system in-house for cold emailing. But again, they hire us because it doesn't work, or at least they didn't like set it up properly as it should have. So they want quick results, and the quickest way to do it is by cold.
Seems like you have a lot of experience into cold calling. What makes a good cold call? What's your structure? What are you teaching your teams in terms of making a very good cold call that converts?
Very good question. I would say let's get first back to the basics, understand why cold calls don't work. Cold calls don't work because most people don't know how to do it and they are not trained on the modern way to do it. A lot of prospects are actually annoyed by cold callers, for example, from like scam centers or like from call centers from, I don't know, India, Pakistan, the Philippines, whatever, doesn't matter. It's because they pitch immediately without relevance, without personalizing the pitch, without understanding the context of the prospect. and without also, to be honest, respecting his time. A lot of like cold callers are very aggressive. Are you familiar with The Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Like the movie always like makes me laugh in the sense that it could have worked, and I think it was working until maybe the early 2000s. But now the prospect has a lot of information. He's not stupid or dumb, or he doesn't have to read like the paper the next day in order to gain access to information. More often than not, he's even more knowledgeable than you are. So the only way to do it, to break through the noise, is make sure that you fully understand the context of the client that you work for, that you're actually calling for. Let's say that you're calling. Let's make an example. I come to and I give you the final answer. Let's say that you're calling a software client and you're selling my services. You're selling SDR as a service. Right? You know the macro trends, difficulty in finding the right talent, hard to ramp up people, predictable results, lack of pipeline, and so on. The VP of sales needs to babysit the SDRs, a lot of turnover, very hard job. And the way that I do it is, first of all, I map the accounts. Let's say that I found an account that fits my criteria. I understand who can be the champion. I'm not going straight to the leadership because you need to build a champion first. Unless the company is very small and don't have like a middle manager, like a senior director, and then of course, yes, you go to the CEO. But we usually tend to work very well with head of business development, head of sales, sales directors, VP of sales, even sales managers, depends on the title, doesn't matter, because they are the most impacted by the problem on the day by day, right? On the daily, right? The in daily routine. So the way I do a cold call is I understand his profile. I read through the paper. I read through like some reports. Maybe they have announced a new Series A, like a series of funding. Maybe they're announcing that they are hiring for SDRs. It means that they are actively investing in the sales department. They are growing, right? Or they just announced a new office, new partnership, new market. Doesn't matter. New change of leadership. As long as you find a hook, something that you can personalize the call with. So let's say, hey, Edward, I noticed that you are the CEO of Tamtam, and I also noticed that you guys are hiring free SDRs. Is it a bad time, or you got 30 seconds to give me? We don't know each other, but you can kind of make it up. A lot of like, there are no universal rules, but usually we do with a very permission-based opener, as it's much more polite, especially in Italy. People like appreciate politeness. There's a very strong hierarchy in Italy, so you always have to use the formal way of expressing, and we tend to ask for time. I know a lot of maybe your people like listening to the podcast are like, no, I go straight to the ask, like I go straight to the pitch. Maybe it can work. But in Italy, it's kind of seen as rude. I wouldn't really advise that. So let's say that you get the 30 seconds, right? Here is where most people fuck it up, mess it up. They go straight to the problem. They go straight to the product. They say, oh, we are the best company. We are doing blah, 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 blah. We are doing a lead generation. Are you interested in booking 15 minutes of blah, blah, blah? It doesn't work. That's why people are annoying. That's why they don't answer your calls. But when you say something about their problems, so you state an hypothesis. Let's say that you say, "Hey, Edward, we work very often with CEOs and senior managers in the SaaS space. What we often see is they lack predictable pipeline, which then impacts the forecasting, or even though the pipeline is actually quite good, sometimes, they actually find very hard, very challenging to find the right people, onboard them, and then ramp them up. And they usually take 6 months of time to market being lost, and investors are kind of pissed off about it. Do any of these problems like ring true to you? Like, does anything of this make sense? Am I knocking on the wrong door? So you kind of like, you have a quite strong hypothesis of what their pain points are because you know the market, you talk to a lot of people, then you know that they have these type of issues. And then they can either say yes or no. If yes, okay, you ask, okay, how does your world look like? Can you tell me more about it? Can you tell me an example how you guys doing it about it? Like, how does this problem impact you specifically? What does it mean for you not solving it, like compared to solving it now or maybe like in 6 months? Then this is like a qualification process, right? And then you tend to close it. There's no meaning, like it's kind of meaningless to have a very long conversation, a cold call, because you're actually disturbing the prospect. You're interrupting them. It's a truth, it's a fact. You're interrupting them their day. So you want to make sure that you capture the attention, convert it into a meeting. Once, of course, it's qualified, only if it's qualified. The last part that 99% of salespeople forget is multi-threading here. It's very easy, but 99% of people forget about it. You could say something like, "Hey, Edward, see, of course, you're the sales managers. Thanks. We have a booked a call for next Thursday. Oh, by the way, I see that your colleague Mark, he's the head of SDR's department. Would it make sense for us to also invite him, as I'm sure he could benefit from our call, or do you think it's like too early to have him involved right now?" 9 out of 10, they're gonna say no. For me, it's okay. Like just me, it's okay this time. But maybe that one time of 10, they're gonna say, yeah, let's invite him. So with one sentence, you already shorten the sales cycle by at least a month, right? So that's something that like a lot of people don't do. And that's something that I always like teach my clients and teach my SDRs to do, because it just makes our client even more happy, because he has more decision makers in one call. So there is no need for endless, back and forth.
Leads me to another question on SDR. In many occasions, they are junior people, young sales professionals. How do you
Mm.
hire SDRs? How do you train those SDRs? How do you make their performance predictable? And how many meetings do they book either per week or per month when they end their ramp up?
Right. We have an internal HR manager managing the full hiring process. So think about it. That we also like work, for example, also with external partners, delivering us leads of potential in target candidates. I think SDRs is very complex. It's very complex because you need people that can adapt quickly across industries and clients. It's a very tough job. A lot of the manual things that SDRs can they used to hide behind, for example, CRM, I don't know, reports or like CRM updates or like lead list building. 20% is automated by AI. Emails as well. LinkedIn, not really, but takes a lot of time. So the SDR needs to do just one thing and one thing only: cold calling, cold calling, cold calling, cold calling, right? Otherwise, it's just useless. So it's very hard to find talented people, but the way that we do it is we usually have like 4 seniors in place. We have 4 seniors as sales SDR managers that have a lot of experience, minimum 15 to 20 years of experience, and they act as buddies, like as coaches, right? Because of course it's very scary when you enter a new company and that you are like, oh my God, like what's going on? I have to suddenly like manage 3 campaigns at a time. I don't know what to do. It's very tough. So we have a very structured onboarding program that usually like takes around 2 weeks. And to have a fully ramped up person, we usually take around 3 weeks. We hire even juniors with even like maybe like 6 months of experience, doesn't matter. As long as they have that hunger, that fire,
Mm.
that resilience, their attitudes toward risk and like persuasion and like hustling, because that's the unruly stuff, Edward. It's not for the weak hearts, and especially the problem of this industry is the very high burnout
Yeah.
rate. It's very easy to like go in burnout because you have to be consistent month after month after month, and every month your target start from zero again, and you have to start and again and again and again. So that's something that I'm looking for in colleagues, is how do you handle difficulties over a long period of time? How do you handle the stress? And we also have like very, how can I say, very targeted coaching programs for our SDRs, both mentally, we work with a mental health
Okay.
provider, but we also work with, for example, basically it's an external coach that created a platform called the Sales University. So we really invest a lot in the constant and continuous training of the SDRs. So yeah, that's how we do it. Usually takes like 2 to 3 weeks to have somebody ramped up in
And at the end
our
of the ramp
company.
up, what should you expect in terms of number of meetings booked per week or per month?
Yeah, first week 0,
Okay.
second week like 2, okay, third week 3, fourth week 5, okay. So it needs to like go quite quick, right? So
And ramp up
we
would
have a
be
very test.
ramp up would be 5 then. At the end of the ramp up
Yeah,
would be 5
ramp up is
every
5.
week.
The monthly target is like 20,
Okay.
20 demos, 20 demos, excuse me, 20 demos per month per SDR.
Okay.
But bear in mind is that These SDRs specifically working for my company, they work for multiple campaigns at a time. So they work at 3 campaigns at a time. So they only have to book, let's say, between 5 and 6, like let's say 6 demos per campaign, an average of 18 demos a month. Yeah. But they don't need to do emails. They don't need to do lead list building. They don't need to do enrichment of mobile phone numbers. They don't need to do like, I don't know, manual data reporting or whatever. Everything is automated. So the only real thing they have to do in terms of added value is just cold calling.
I think it depends also on how big is the ACV. As you mentioned,
Absolutely.
price prospect, price meetings that you book for your clients, the bar should be lower. If I give
For
you
sure.
one example on our end, we are more into mid-market type of prospect. I wouldn't be happy with the SDR bringing home 5 meetings a week. Rather, the
That's a
bar
lot.
is doing more than 10 every week. Final question on, you mentioned AI. Would be interesting for our listeners on outbound tools in terms of calling as well. Dialers, the parallel dialers. I don't know. More and more people are talking about that.
Talking
What is
about
for
it.
you the best tech stack, and how do you leverage AI specifically?
Right. Let's start with the basics. So lead sourcing. So how to build a qualified lead list. To be honest, Clay. Clay is the number one most powerful tool right now to build a very targeted lead list, especially because it connects to multiple data sources and works across a lot of industries, also very non super digitalized industries, like the manufacturing, for example. Then comes the enrichment, right? In our case, we invest a lot in the phone enrichment. So like mobile phone numbers, which are, by the way, GDPR compliant for those who may ask, because they always ask us like, oh, but is this compliant? Is this legal? Yes, it is legal because we use full enrich. By the way, they don't pay me to say this, which is
Ben
basically
is
a
a
data
friend, and
provider.
we have them part of our waterfall enrichment as well. So I really like the guys.
Oh, that's great. That's great. It's no, it's a great tool, specifically for the European market. We see more or less like 90% accuracy in Italy, so that's really good. We tried like other tools like in the past, like Apollo, Homeless, or Lucia, whatever, but they didn't quite come as close as Food and Reach in terms of data accuracy and also, of course, like also the quantity of the data, right? Across a span of multiple industries, not just software. With that being said, the last real tool that we use for the outbound is a dialer.
Yeah.
We use a manual dialer
Okay.
because, as I said, we work mainly with mid-size and enterprise companies from our clients. So we cannot just like call, I don't know, 400 calls a day, for example. Um, Aircall, we use Aircall,
Okay.
which is
French
a French
company.
company. Yeah, it's a French company. It's quite good actually. Know some Italian guys working there in the Paris office. I know it's a very nice tool. We use local mobile numbers, so
Yeah.
we call like with plus 39. I don't know, 392 or something. So it's a cell phone number calling to other cell phones. And this is essential because people don't just answer to generic numbers anymore, as it's like linked to spam or call centers from Romania or other places. For email, we use for ourselves Lemlist, again, a French company. You guys have quite good
You
sales tech,
mainly
let
use
me tell
French
you that.
company instead of
Yeah, I may use French company. Yeah,
not Clay, but maybe we'll use Tamtam tomorrow.
yeah, Tamtam is the next one, is on the list. But yeah, Lambless is quite solid. We used to use like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but it's very outdated, very UI UX unfriendly, extremely expensive, and it doesn't do the job anymore. Maybe like 5 years ago, yes, but now there are much better tools. So it can help, but only if it's needed. We don't use that anymore.
Are you
So
a Clay expert yourself? Do you have one within your team? How are you organized?
yeah,
Because,
we have a go-to-market engineer
okay,
in the sales ops department. There are 3 guys in the sales ops. And they basically are tasked to build like lead lists, automations, and like enrich the CRM, all the good stuff, to make sure that the SDRs are as efficient as humanly possible. So yeah, he is a Clay expert, as a matter of fact, and he was actually part of the championship that I think like occurred last year,
okay, cool.
2025. Representing the Italian team. Anyway, that's what we do. And then I would say on the AI, well, AI, it's a quite a buzzword. like a lot of hype. I would say that AI is making outbound easier but noisier at the same time, especially on email and LinkedIn. As I said, LinkedIn is tracking down a lot of these automation tools.
Yeah.
It's like yesterday, another big thing. I think the most important was Hey Reach that we tried actually. They had a very solid product, but now they got banned. So it kind of makes you understand that LinkedIn just doesn't want automations connected to their API. So we see that a lot of customers, when we approach them, by cold calling or because they came from inbound or whatever, we always ask them, what do you think about AI? What do you think about the emails that you get or like the outreach that you get yourself, right? They literally say, I'm not even joking, all of them, and we have more than 60 customers up to date, like today, all of them say they don't ever reply to LinkedIn and email messages. Never, never, never.
Crazy.
Because they are always like created by automation tools with copy and paste frameworks. And that's why I put a lot of emphasis on the calls because it's the last channel, apart from of course expos and events, that you can have a live conversation
Yeah.
with a customer,
And
that you
feedback
can have
and
a real
insights as
human
well.
interaction.
Feedback, insights.
Exactly. You can get data, 100%, that or like you can get data and feedback if your messaging works quite quick, actually. And you don't have to track like open rates or whatever and like being like, how can I say, passive about it. You're actively hunting for people. And the only thing that you cannot control is the how many people pick up. But the more you do, the better. But email has a lot of spam filters. So you cannot send 1,000 emails a day or something. So like the technical aspect of emails has gone quite complex in the recent years. It means that you cannot just start an outbound campaign with emails and hope there for the best because your email gets blocked, gets flagged, and your domain is basically gone.
That's great. Thanks a lot. I can see time passing by. If you can give maybe for the final question of that interview, you
Of
can
course.
give just a very sharp advice, very short advice for founders, head of sales, listening to the podcast in terms of what should they do to improve their pipeline.
Yeah, most founders try to do too many things at once. That's why nothing works. So pick one, maximum two ICPs, go deep, understand the real pain points, build a messaging around that, and choose one acquisition channel, test it for 90 days, track the right metrics, and then scale it from there and double down on the intensity and expand to other channels once it's proven. Without focus, you create noise, and with focus, you can actually start building a system and a predictable pipeline.
So less is more, essentially. We started
Yeah,
with less is
less is
more and
more.
we finish with less is more.
We
Thanks.
finish less is more.
Thanks a lot, Paolo.
Thanks, Edward.
And hopefully we'll be in touch pretty soon. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Thank you.